Hello, good morning and welcome to ET Now's the newspaper show with me, Varun Hireman. For the next half an hour, we'll be walking you through the major headlines from the Economic Times as well as the Times of India. But before we do that, let me remind you that the newspapers are completely safe and are not a source of contamination for the COVID-19 virus. So if you are interested in getting your newspaper delivered to your residence, go to wantmypaper.com. I repeat again, wantmypaper.com if you are interested in getting the newspaper delivered to your residence. With that being said, let's now get a move on, and it's an action-packed Friday morning for you. Top 10 stories of the Economic Times, beginning with the fact that the HDFC franchise and HDFC Limited I'm talking about has rolled out a 14,000 crore fundraising plan. Byju's parent buys WhiteHat Jr for 300 million. Low threshold may define beneficial owner. Services sector continues to shrink. Tyagi gets 18th month extension as SEBI Chief. ED may charge sheet Kochhars' son soon. Desi Apps out to replace banned Chinese peers. Government mulls options to limit China's soft power. Social security net for gig workers soon. Heavy rainfall, strong winds batter Mumbai. Now going to bifurcate for you, market versus corporate. The market headlines are RBI to probe Private Bank FDRs to brokers. Axis Bank QIP gets close to 3x subscription. Metals rally on high demand from China and Europe. Reliance Retail surges on future deal buzz. Credit card debt shrinks nearly 10% in Q1. Okay, corporate. Airtel Africa calls off Kenya Ops merger plan. Airtel AWS Inc. pact to build cloud expertise. Boeing suspends pact for AI Dreamliners. PNB classifies RHFL loan exposure as fraud. Finally, no change in long-term view on India, says Diageo. Okay, so those were the headlines. Let's now get a move on with the individual stories. And page 5 of the Economic Times, the RBI has initiated a probe into funding arrangements between some private banks and stockbrokers. The move came in after a lender's refusal to pay up as a part of a share settlement process, which led to legal dispute. The central bank has written to SEBI seeking details about FDRs, but Poonam's going to walk us through what exactly transpired here. So good morning, Poonam. Welcome to the show. Could you elaborate for us, please?
Yeah, good morning, Varun. In fact, if we're looking at the news spread, it states that the RBI has initiated a probe into the funding arrangements between some of the private banks and stockbrokers after a lender's refusal to pay up a part of the share settlement process has led to a legal dispute. RBI has written to SEBI, in fact, Varun, seeking details about the so-called fixed deposit receipts, which is an instrument that brokers are placing with the clearing members of trades as a collateral. Now, how does this work? In fact, typically what happens is a broker makes a deposit with a bank, which then issues a fixed deposit receipt equivalent to that amount, along with the interest rate, to the clearing member. But now what has happened is the regulators have stumbled upon instances where brokers have borrowed money from the banks and then created FDRs and given that as a collateral. By doing this, the brokers are essentially paying just a very smaller amount of money upfront, and it is also leading possibly to a systemic risk, according to Reserve Bank of India. The Bank of India has in fact written to SEBI to handle the details of such funded fixed deposit receipts as well. The matter has come to light, in fact, Varun, in the India Nivesh case, which had given funded fixed deposit receipts issued by HDFC Bank as collateral to Edelweiss, the clearing member. When Edelweiss wanted to encash them, HDFC Bank had disputed this. Edelweiss had challenged this in the Bombay High Court on the grounds that HDFC Bank was depriving it of its rightful funds. The Bombay High Court has referred the matter to arbitration and said that the fixed deposit receipts can't be invoked by any of the parties until the process is complete. So now we are still finding and awaiting response from India Nivesh as well. Having said that, we also understand that India Nivesh has also shut its broking business in the month of April itself. Now, the exact reason for the probe can create systemic risk issues as well. So this is what we understand, and probably we will have to wait and watch out for how this entire story develops.
Okay, Poonam, thank you so much. And that was a very detailed description of exactly what's happening. So thank you. I think that really simplifies it for a lot of people. That was Poonam on RBI probing regarding some current limits set in and practices rather between brokerages. Okay, let's now switch gears a little bit to page 5 of the Economic Times. And this story is revolving around two fundraisers, Axis Bank and HDFC Limited. Axis Bank QIP, which opened day before yesterday, which was an ET Now exclusive, has received bids to 3x of the shares that were allotted. So excuse me for smiling, but it's definitely a positive takeaway when you put up a book or an issue, specifically in times like this, and it sees 3 times oversubscription in a matter of 2 days. It's not a small feat, especially in the case of Axis Bank, which will minimum, I think, be raising around 10,000 crore. Now, what's further exciting for them is the names that have so far crept in. You have the likes of an Abu Dhabi Investment Authority. You also have funds such as Fidelity and Nomura Asset Management that are looking at this book. So marquee names, pedigree investors, strong oversubscription. So that's Axis for you. Now, what's happening conversely, last night, HDFC has also announced a fundraise, and this is something that they had actually first announced a while back. Now they've just come through with it. 14,000 crore. This will be a hybrid model. So 4,000 crore will be warrants and 10,000 crore will be fresh equity issued at a price again of 1,838 rupees per share. That's a floor price. So if you take a 5% discount, as is the norm in these cases, it comes to around 760 rupees per share. That's quite a decent price. In addition to this, there'll be 9,000 crores that they're looking to raise via NCD, and these warrants that are being issued will be issued at 2,165, so that's around 10 to 15% higher than the current CMP, and will be valid for a tenure of 3 years. So good news coming in, and like we flagged off yesterday, that's $5 billion potentially of capital raised now that's due in the next 10 days. So that was on fundraise. We're now going to switch gears a little bit to something relating to Byju, and Chandra is actually going to walk us through this, but let me give you a slight intro. Byju's parent has bought WhiteHat Jr. in a $300 million all-cash deal. Byju plans to invest in WhiteHat Jr.'s technology platform, product innovation, and may launch coding for children. So Chandra tracks Byju's quite closely, and she's with us now. So good morning, Chandra. What is WhiteHat Jr. really going to do for Byju? What does it bring to the table? And do you think it was a fair value deal, or do you feel it was overpriced or maybe slightly undervalued?
The valuation is a difficult thing to predict, Varun, because the edtech space is a really hot sector right now. In fact, it's the only outlier during the pandemic, and it's seen very strong growth in the last few months. And this is actually a remarkable deal because WhiteHat Jr. is just 20 months old and it's only raised $11 million so far. But in 20 months, it's managed to get an estimate a valuation of $300 million. So that's a very good exit for the founders and the investors of WhiteHat. In fact, out of the $300 million, $120 to $150 million will directly go to the founder because he owns 40 to 50%. And as you said, it's a coding platform for kids. You often see these WhiteHat ads pop up online with pictures of Sundar Pichai and Bill Gates So that's something that Byjus wants to capitalize on because they play into this K-12 segment with their online teaching classes. So that way it is a remarkable deal. It's also an all-cash deal, no equity here. And this also comes ahead of a major fundraise for Byju. So Byju is slated to raise another $400 million from DSC Global, a Russian fund. And this will make them the second most valued startup unicorn in India after Paytm. Byjus will be valued at over $10.5 billion after that fundraise, which is expected to happen before the end of this week. So clearly, we don't know if there's a lot of froth in the edtech space, but it's a good time if you are an edtech entrepreneur in India.
Okay, I wish we had been edtech entrepreneurs, Chandra, but no, that's great for Byjus, and it's definitely growing and really establishing itself as an edtech major, and it's great to see an Indian company really leading that sector from the fore. So thanks again, Chandra, for bringing us that story. Let's now switch gears to page 4 of the Economic Times. Airtel Africa has called off the planned merger of its Kenyan unit with partly state-owned Telkom Kenya. It was called off, citing prolonged regulatory delays. In February 2019, Airtel Africa's Kenyan arm, Airtel Networks Kenya, and Telkom Kenya had inked a pact to merge their operations. This would have enabled Airtel to effectively take on Safaricom, the market leader in the East African nation. So completion of the merger transaction was subject to various conditions, though including regulatory approvals. So some M&A blips over there for Airtel, and it'll be interesting to see if there's any impact on the counter today as a result of this. Okay, next story, page 5 of the Economic Times. SEBI Chairman Tyagi has been given an extension for another 18 months to ensure policy continuity and stability amid the COVID-19 pandemic. Ajaya is now with us. Good morning, Ajaya. Could you walk us through the finer print, please?
Well, that's correct, Varun. Good morning. This is big news. Good news from Mr. Tyagi, who actually is being will be in office till all the way till February of 2022. His term was due to end in this September, but the term has been extended by 3 years. Typically, SEBI Chief roles are for 2 years. But it appears that the good work which he has taken is being liked by Finance Ministry. He took charge of SEBI in March of 2017. When he took over, SEBI was in the midst of a merger with Forward Markets Commission and was also dealing with high-profile cases such as NSE, co-location case, etc. But he had managed to navigate through all of them very nicely, and in the middle has taken a lot of steps even in the capital market side, especially bringing mutual funds and the portfolio management scheme PMSs closer to each other, and a lot of retail investor friendly, reducing the size for PMS guys from 50 lakhs to 25 lakhs. Many other interesting steps have been taken, and so a lot of reforms have been brought about. Uday Kotak Committee and Corporate Governance and their recommendations are also being implemented for bringing change in the mutual fund categories, and he acted very swiftly in the Karvi case as well. So it appears clearly that good quality work always gets rewarded. He's a very soft-spoken and otherwise a very media-shy guy. He barely talks to the media apart from some of us offline. But his biggest test actually came when government said that it would ask SEBI to part ways with the excess reserves. And he did consult with the government representatives conducively, and the decision was taken. So it's a very interesting news which has come in, especially for market participants, the mutual fund guys, the big PMS guys, FIIs, all of them, that the term has been extended. And indeed, last 3 years, 4 years have been quite tumultuous for the capital markets and its participants. So it is good that in a way that now that we are coming out of a pandemic and its aftermath also being seen on the capital market, that a guy, a friendly guy and somebody who's they've dealt with only stays for the next 3 years. So it is an interesting development, no question about it.
No, right, Ajay, it most definitely is. When any great leader or someone who's exhibited good leadership sticks on at the franchise, it always gives everyone, a good feeling and a vote of confidence that everything will be okay. So it feels like from what you said that something similar is happening with Ajay Tyagi's extension. And we'll be positively reacting to that. So thank you very much for joining us this morning. Let's now move on to page 1 of the Economic Times. India may prescribe a low threshold for beneficial ownership under the Foreign Direct Investment Policy. FDI, which was recently amended to require prior government approval for investments originating from China and other neighboring countries. Policymakers have deliberated both a 25% and a 10% limit, but are veering around to the lower limit of 10%. A final call will be taken at the highest level of government. That's what ET sources are indicating. And the 10% limit is consistent with the definition of beneficial ownership in the Companies Act. So that's another key one to look out for this morning. Let's now switch gears to page 9 of the Economic Times. And according to ET, the Labour Ministry may soon include gig workers under the existing social security schemes of the government. This would make them eligible for pension and medical benefits. This inclusion in the existing social security schemes would benefit millions of gig workers associated with delivery startups such as Zomato and Swiggy, or drive partnerships such as Ola, Uber and other e-commerce giants as well, such as Amazon and Flipkart. Large numbers of these workers are among the millions of unorganized workers who lost jobs during the nationwide lockdown imposed for March 25th to prevent the spread of the COVID-19 virus. So we're hoping to get these guys back on board and with some social security as well. Okay. We're now going to be giving you a weather-related update, and this is page 9 of the Economic Times. Heavy rains accompanied by strong winds battered Mumbai and neighboring areas, causing flooding and disrupting road and railway traffic. Several localities in Mumbai faced blackouts. South and central Mumbai bore the maximum brunt. According to the IMD, the Colaba Observatory recorded a whopping 229.6 millimeters of rainfall in just 9 hours on Wednesday. In fact, several parts of South Mumbai got more than 300 millimeter rainfall in just 10 hours. So much rainfall in such a short time led to choked drains, water entering into houses, home shops. The rain also paralyzed the railway network, with tracks being flooded. Commuters, mostly government officials and essential services employees, were stranded. This is the highest rainfall Mumbai has seen in 46 years at 294 millimeters. So definitely a weather anomaly, if we can call it that. Okay, we're now winding down to the end of our show. But before we do, Times of India Business page 11, a very interesting story about Harley Davidson. And American cult bike maker Harley Davidson is downsizing its operations in India, unfortunately. Harley has also laid off workers as the business has slowed down in the wake of the coronavirus pandemic, and the outlook remains grim. The company is slashing production at its assembly operations at Bawal in Haryana, with one of the key labor union leaders of the region claiming that output is being severely curtailed. So Harley Davidson sorts cooling off their business ambitions in India. Okay, top 5 headlines from the Times of India. Now that we're done with that story. Mumbai gets 294 millimeters of rain in the last 12 hours. That we just already brought to your attention. Ayodhya lights up in August ceremony. At 52K, India sees max single day recoveries for a change. Gold hits new peak, silver nears high. And Harley scales down India ops, like we just told you. So those were all our stories and individual headlines for this morning.